Hello, everyone. Oh my God, I haven't done a live in a year. I don't know, but I figured this was the time. I just finished up a television hit where I had to run down the accomplishments of our now vice presidential nominee under the Democratic ticket, Tim Walz. I haven't been so excited probably since 2008, under when we were campaigning for Obama and won the primary and had so much hope, but now it's hope with wisdom. Like, we not only do we understand the mistakes that Democrats have made, and hopefully we don't make them again, but we see what's coming with Trump, and we are aware of how the Republicans are playing games. And I think it's a deeper hope. So what I'm going to do, because I've been seeing the comments, is I'm going to run down some information about our vice presidential pick. First off, if I were a betting person, I'd be making a lot of money right now. Unfortunately, that's illegal in our country to bet, to do political betting. But if so, I will say it wasn't just because I love Tim Walz. I think for those of you who've been following me, I've been pushing for Tim Walz for a while, because he's not just a pick for the heart, he's a pick for the head. I was listening to an interview with Tim Kaine a couple of days ago. Tim Kaine was the vice presidential pick under Hillary Clinton, of course, in 2016. When he was being interviewed, they asked Tim Kaine what was the process like for the vice presidential choice process. And he actually talked about in 2008 how Obama went to him and he was in the final two. Excuse me, I'm like at such a loss of words right now because I'm so excited. All the words are just jumbling up in my head. And anyways, so in 2008, Tim Kaine was in the final two between Biden and Tim Kaine. And the Obama campaign flew Tim Kaine out to, I forgot, some like Midwest, middle of nowhere campaign event. And they met in a back room by the water coolers and had a great meeting. And this is very similar to what happened yesterday, which I'll get to in a second. And Obama said to him, listen, I have a choice between my heart and my head. You're my heart, is what Obama said to Tim Kaine, because notably Tim Kaine was very likable. People, while he's much more conservative than I think a lot of us would want, Tim Kaine was very well liked with his colleagues. And that at the time was something that was, he was considering. And it's very important for you to get along with your vice president, I assume, especially since reporting between, not to ruin it today, but there's been a lot of reporting between the Biden and Harris teams not getting along so well. Anyways, so Tim Kaine said at the end of the day, the next day, Russia invaded Georgia. And that was when Tim Kaine knew that the vice president pick would be Biden, because Biden was the head of the Foreign Relations Committee. So a little bit of history there. Aside from that, what's so interesting about this ticket is, without going through the histories of all the other candidates had negatives on them that could affect enthusiasm. And right now, there is such incredible enthusiasm happening in this campaign that I don't think we've seen in a long time, and didn't expect with a Kamala Harris ticket. To see it grow is pretty outstanding. I am at a loss of words. I'm actually quite emotional right now. I don't know if anybody else is here. Give me a wave if you are, because after being through so many of these fights with the Democrats, so many of these fights on the Bernie side, seeing somebody who has Bernie values, he's also got this history. In leadership, he was he's the head of the DGA, which is the Democratic Governors Association. That's a very important position. He's liked by his colleagues. I love Bernie so much, but this is something that Bernie had some issues with, was his colleagues. And part of that, let's be real, is because the Clinton campaign, didn't want him to be liked by his colleagues. But Tim Walz has these Midwestern values. He's a populist. In 2008, when he was in Congress, he vociferously was against bailing out the big banks with taxpayer money. I'm going to go through a list of his accomplishments right now, just so we have it. So, okay, first off, he grew up in rural Nebraska. His father died at quite a young age. He decided to join, because his father was a veteran, he decided to join the Army National Guard, and he was in the Army National Guard for over 2 decades. He moved to he moved to Minnesota. He volunteered for the John Kerry campaign, which is crazy because, Tim Walz, I feel like we think he's older. He is. He's 60. But, he was fairly young at that point under the Kerry campaign. So he volunteered for Kerry. A couple years later, he ran for Congress in Minnesota, took his opponent by shock, won that seat, served there from 2007 to 2019. He was the co-chair of the Veterans Job Committee. I think this is very important in that in key swing states, whether it's Arizona, North Carolina might be back in the mix, Georgia, there are quite a few veterans. And I think we're going to lean in on this as Democrats, and it's a very smart move. He was a former public school teacher, if I haven't mentioned that. He's a social studies teacher. I mean, all around, Tim Walz is such a great pick. Under his administration as governor, he passed free school lunch, and there's that incredible picture in that video you may have seen when it happened of all these kids hugging him when he was signing the bill. He funded public transit. He passed a PFA ban. He raised corporate taxes. I'm trying to remember all the things. There's 3 months paid sick leave in Minnesota. He passed 100% renewable energy. Oh my God, the list goes on and on. Oh, he's enshrined the abortion in the state. He's been open about his journey with reproductive issues with his wife. And he said that the reason why his daughter's name is Hope is because they went through this very difficult IVF journey. So this is an election where I personally believe, especially in the heartland, women are we say it's about white men, but it also is about women. And white women determine this election. It helps to have white men. I think that's something that the Trump-Vance administration or campaign, is going to be excited about. They are leaning in on white men, but Tim Walz is a white man, and he's also an ally of women. And if your campaign, the Republican campaign, is doubling down on not just being weird, which is something Tim Walz brought to the table, but being so anti-women and punishing them for every single decision in their life. I mean, this is a very bizarre electoral strategy, but okay, lean in on it. Trump-Vance ticket. Walz has done all that he can and hopefully more in enshrining women's health. I think this is, aside from his accomplishments, I said this from the get-go, that I don't, some people are like, oh, well, we need a younger ticket. Kamala Harris is young. She brings the excitement. This is about winning this election. This is about winning against Trump-Vance, and Walz doesn't, and keeping this excitement alive. I mean, we were already excited about this ticket with Kamala Harris. I mean, just the difference between 2 weeks ago and today, and now we're even more excited. Like in the lead up to this, I have not seen so many people that I used to be on the opposite side of in 2016 come together and say Tim Walz is the guy. Would it have been great to have somebody who was a person of color or from a different state? Okay, fine, yes, but this is about electoral math, and some folks are saying, oh, well, the vice president doesn't really make a difference. In this election, I think it does, because we had negatives while there were positives, there were negatives that canceled out the positives with some of the other ticket choices. I don't want to run down their negatives because, they're out of the picture today, but I'll just mention some of the issues. Excitement, ego, positions on Israel, Palestine, and Gaza. We need to get our base as solidified as possible. In 2016, this was the issue with Hillary Clinton. Without going down the receipts that we ran on in 2016 under the Bernie campaign and warned the Hillary campaign, go look up an article called "They Didn't Effing Listen to Us." That was my quote in the Daily Beast, in which we met with the Hillary team in 2016 at the convention and afterwards about what they needed to do to keep the base alive, and they did not do it. And as a result, whether it was people of color in Pennsylvania not turning out at the levels that they needed to, or environmental voters staying out, and of course there were a million other things that were on the table, including interference and smear campaigns, and we know how, we're not expecting Trump to operate as strongly as he did, but we're not blind this time around. We're not blind in that we don't have blind hope like we did for Obama, and we're not blind in that we are not prepared for whatever the Republicans can do. And that includes legal, and independent expenditures, and having tech platforms completely annihilating discourse. I mean, 2016 tech platforms operated very differently. I would do a live video and I would have literally sometimes 1 million people watch, and right now I have 30 people watching me. Just put that in perspective. So, they've definitely put their thumb on the scale. I mean, it's really clear that a lot of us are shadow banned, but that's a whole other conversation. So we're dealing with a different landscape. The courts, of course, are completely taken over by conservatives. The legislature is taken over by conservatives. I mean, what is also so incredible about Walz is that he has been able to pass so much because he has a Democratic legislator. Look, kids, if you don't know who Paul Wellstone is, go Google Paul Wellstone videos. Paul Wellstone tragically passed away, I believe it was 2001 or 2002. I met him in 2001 at a Georgetown summer school with Junior Statesman Association, which I'm mentioning for a reason because just a couple days ago, JSA, Junior Statesman Association, 90 years old organization, announced that it was shuttering. And folks, alums from that organization have voiced outrage because it changed our lives. I was able to meet Paul Wellstone, and there's this photo that I have framed. He was a public school teacher. Paul Wellstone, we met all of these different lawmakers at this summer program, and Paul Wellstone impacted all of us. He knew how to speak to young people. He knew how to speak to voters. I didn't even know what a populist was back then. So if you're young watching this, consider yourself ahead of the curve, because in our day, the internet didn't exist the way it does now. And then he tragically passed away in a plane accident a couple months later after we met him. Tim Walz is a Paul Wellstone Democrat. He is not only a progressive, not only is he pro-labor, not only does he have a progressive, not just on social issues, but on labor issues record, not only is he affable, not only do his colleagues love him, but he's been in leadership too. I mean, he's the chair of the Democratic Governors Association. Let's just put that in perspective. Right now, we have a progressive chair of the DGA. That is wild. If you guys know what the Democratic Leadership Committee Conference, DLC, the DLC was this organization that came out of the late 70s, early 80s, when there were a bunch of moderate, elite Democrats who wanted to lean in on the corporate side because they feared that Republicans, because of campaign finance laws changing a decade prior, Republicans were ahead of the curve when it came to money. And Democrats at that time made a bet saying, well, we need to become a little bit more corporate because we're not going to be able to compete across the country. And the DLC was born, and it was very Clintonian. Al Gore was an early member, but Al Gore shifted away later. And that era ruled our politics until now. I mean, there was this sort of shift with technocrats under Obama. And there's one thing that I'll say I'm a little cautious of is some of the Obama team coming over to the Harris campaign. They did great. Okay, they won 2008. I know some of these people personally. They also shifted over to the Clinton campaign in 2016, and they didn't do great. So sometimes if a team wins one race, it doesn't necessarily mean that they had this brilliant strategy. And so I'm a little concerned about some of these political insiders that we've run across being on the Harris-Walz campaign. But let's put that aside for today. Let's just be excited about Walz. This is a huge win for progressives. This is a huge win for the country. I think this is a winning ticket. Also, what was reported is that Kamala Harris, she met with him, Walz and Harris met 2 days ago in DC, and then she flew out to Minnesota for a private fundraiser last night. She went to bed. She had not made the decision yet, and she didn't have a relationship like she did with Mark Kelly of Arizona, or Shapiro, like a personal relationship. So they had just met, and he's likable, and she went to bed not having made the decision, and she woke up this morning, as many of us woke up this morning with the news, and she made the decision. And that's what CNN reported. So I think a lot of us expected it to be some sort of video that went out. That was what was being reported. And maybe that was the original plan. And there were some leaks with Shapiro's video also. But politics, as we've learned, can change overnight. It can change in an hour. It can change in a day. It can change, just in a flash. And I think so many of us are happy. So let's celebrate today. I'm drinking my mushroom coffee because I gave up coffee. I gave up coffee and I have this energy. I have to go on TV in about 5 minutes. So just wanted to check in with you all and give you an update. This is a unifying ticket. He brings together, he leans in on labor. This is a huge sign for the Harris campaign. I think she realizes she cannot let this excitement go and we have to build off of it. I don't think they're taking the base for granted. Let's go, let's go, let's go. I'm loving this. We need a new tagline. Like I think we need to build on this. This is a new era, and let's learn from our mistakes in the past. Let's learn from the Obama administration. Let's learn from the Obama campaign. Let's learn from 2016. Let's learn from 2020. Let's learn from the Biden campaign. Actually, my friend Josh Fox came over to my house last night. We tried to do a quick live because he said something brilliant, but my phone didn't register it. But he said, Biden was very clever as a master of the Senate in passing key progressive legislation under unifying headlines. The biggest climate legislation, workers legislation. He was very smart at that. But the problem is that it's not great for messaging. So I think that we need to, and Harris is recognizing this, is we really need to champion our message. And another thing that's great about Tim Walz is he's such a great messenger. If you haven't had a chance to go and watch his cable news hits in the last couple of weeks, actually prior to that he's been doing this, but he brought weird into the conversation, but he's been so good at speaking to Republicans. He says what one person calls socialism, another person calls being a good neighbor. This is what we need. We need a team that understands progressive messaging, being pro-worker, also speaks to conservative voters. If you grew up in an area where there were conservatives, for many of you don't know this, but I grew up in a rural area. I grew up outside of Buffalo. My mom was a local lawmaker, and she won a district as a legislator that was 3-1 Republican, and she unseated a Republican who'd been there, I think, for like 30 years or something. And years ago, this is like in the early 2000s, someone asked her, what was the secret? And she said, I just knocked on everybody's door. I just showed up. And it doesn't mean that her policies weren't progressive, but she understood it's about showing up. And it's why I'm a broken record when it comes to the Democrats investing in local state parties. Because when you're not showing up, you're not messaging. And when you're not investing in state parties, which is a huge mistake under the Obama administration, the Obama Democratic Party, and this is also my concern with the people who are now joining the Harris team, is they were directing the DNC. They were the ones who decided to put that money, take it away from the state parties and put it into the presidential campaign. There's a balance. You need Democratic parties all across this country. You need to message the way Tim Walz messages in every single community. We cannot take these rural districts for granted. We cannot leave Arizona. We cannot leave the Midwest. We cannot leave North Carolina, Florida. We can't leave these states on the table, especially because the margins aren't as big as we think they are. We have to make this a party of Tim Walz messaging. He knows how to speak to conservatives. He knows how to speak to working people. He knows how to speak to white men. He knows how to be a good ally. He's going to be up there bringing excitement, but he's also going to praise Kamala Harris. He's going to let her shine. That is quite a balance. So congrats, everybody. I got to go on TV. Love you all. Great day. Harris Walz, let's go win this. We need a great tagline. I'm over, fired up, ready to go. Let's do something new. Let's crowdsource this. I'll be on Twitter all day. Bye. And I forgot how to close these things. I haven't done a live in so long. They changed the buttons.